and welcome, and thanks for tuning in. You're watching Gravitas. My name is Priyanka Sharma. Here's our show for tonight. Pakistan's capital is under siege. In Islamabad, the chickens are coming home to roost. After decades of providing patronage to terror groups, it's payback time for Pakistan. On Monday morning, just a few hours after parents dropped their children at schools, they received a distressing message. It urged them to pick up their children and take them home. Pak authorities decided to indefinitely close authorities and universities along with schools in the capital. Why? You see, the city is in a state of alert due to fears of a possible terror attack. You heard that right. Terror state Pakistan is worried that they might come under attack by the same forces that they have sheltered for so long. As per reports, the closure order came after Pak authorities received the threat of a suicide attack by a banned militant group. And as is the case with such situations, fake news further amplified fear and confusion. By evening, the Islamabad police was forced to dispel panic. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, the police asked people not to believe in fake notifications being issued for the closure of businesses and educational institutions. The police confirmed that they did receive the threat of a suicide attack, but did not identify the terror group that issued that threat. Here's what we do know so far. An Islamabad police official told news agency AFP on condition of anonymity that 3 universities affiliated with Pakistan's military were shut down because of potential threats. The universities in question are the National Defence University, Bahariya University and Air University. These institutions are tied to Pakistan's Army, Navy and Air Force. Now they have been shut down indefinitely. Multiple media reports said that the attack was planned at the Bahariya University and it could involve sending a female suicide bomber. A text sent to this particular university, and as seen by AFP, said, due to security reasons, all faculty and staff except security and necessary admin staff will work from home. A 4th university, a public institute, also received the threat. The name of this institute is Quaid-e-Azam University. It will reportedly be closed for a week. These closures come after Pak security agencies conducted a search operation in the suburbs of Islamabad on late Sunday. That's when the university administration reportedly informed students about the indefinite closure. The announcement will also affect the upcoming exams. They have been postponed for now. The Pak police imposed complete ban on public gatherings. They said that they were working to ensure that law and order is under control. But the timing of this is important. Pakistan is set to vote in general elections on February 8th, and this is amid overlapping political, economic and security crises. Add to that the rising violence along its border regions. In 2023, Pakistan witnessed as many as 789 terror attacks. Nearly 1,000 died as a result of these attacks, including civilians and security personnel. 2 of the most violent attacks last year were carried out by the regional affiliate of ISIL, the Islamic State Khorasan province, also known as ISKP. In July, they targeted a political rally in Bajaur, a tribal district in neighboring Afghanistan. More than 60 people were killed. In September, they were behind a major blast in Balochistan, which killed more than 50 people. Overall, deaths have been at a record 6-year high since 2017, according to a report by the Center for Research and Security Studies. It's a perfect storm of troubles for Pakistan. Let's not forget the cross-border flare-up that happened last week between Iran and Pakistan over Baloch militants. It highlighted how, in the absence of counter-terrorism measures, festering issues can rapidly escalate into on-ground conflict. This is the cost that Pakistan has to pay for harboring terror. Former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton had famously said, "You can't keep snakes in your backyard and expect them to only bite your neighbor." This was Clinton's warning in 2011 for providing a safe haven to terror groups. That statement has aged well. In fact, it sums up why Pakistan, the exporter of terror, continues to face terror threats within its own country. Even after Pakistan became an ally of America in the global war on terror, in the aftermath of 9/11, Pakistan never seriously tried to disarm jihadi groups on its own soil. While the ISKP targeted civilians, other newer terror groups like the Tehreek-e-Taliban, the Pakistani offshoot of the Afghan Taliban, have singled out security personnel. With the backing from the Taliban, terror groups have reportedly changed their tactics. They are not attacking civilians in the cities. They have focused instead on Pakistan's military and police personnel. The number of security personnel killed in the attacks is highest in a decade. The human toll of this has been immense. On December 13th last year, a total of 25 Pak army soldiers were killed in 3 separate incidents. It happened in the restive Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. It was the Pak military's highest single-day death toll from a terror attack in 2023. The TJP, or the Tehreek-e-Jihad, a new group affiliated with the Tehreek-e-Taliban, claimed hand in these attacks. It was formed only in February last year. This group is focused on attacking only military targets. They go so far as to condemn any terror attacks that end up killing civilians. Make no mistake, Pakistan is in this condition thanks to its own policies. Pakistan has become both a sponsor of terrorism and now an epicenter of terrorism. Remember, it is a nuclear power which suffers tremendously from attacks of domestic extremists and stands politically troubled as well as economically overwhelmed. Pakistan's military leaders have for years vowed counter-terrorism measures, but they have never taken them seriously enough to implement them effectively. There is now an urgent need for the people of Pakistan, its politicians and its powerful army to stand on the same side in the fight against terrorism. Unless they do that, new offshoots and breakaway groups of existing terror groups will continue to emerge, and it's the people who will continue to pay the price. It's day 109 of the Israel-Hamas war, a day which was perhaps the deadliest for Israel since it started its ground offensive in Gaza. Here's why I say this. Earlier today, Israel suffered its worst loss in Gaza in terms of casualties. 24 IDF soldiers were killed during one operation. 24. That's a big number, especially given Israel's advanced defense capabilities as compared to Hamas. How did this happen? Was the IDF caught off guard? Well, reports say the deaths occurred during an IDF raid in the west part of Khan Yunis. For the unversed, Khan Yunis is the main city located in the southern part of the enclave. It is sheltering hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who have fled areas in the north. Israel says the city is now the principal base of Hamas, so it's been launching raids in this particular city. But this time, things didn't go according to plan. Reports say a rocket-propelled grenade hit a tank that was guarding Israeli forces. At the same time, there was an explosion across 2 buildings where the IDF had planted explosives in order to destroy the buildings. The explosion triggered their collapse onto the Israeli soldiers. This led to the death of 24 soldiers, marking the highest one-day Israeli death toll since the war began. Although some media reports say that the real figure could be higher, here's what the Israeli military spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, had to say about the incident.
According to what is known at this stage, around 4 o'clock, it seems that an RPG missile was fired by terrorists at a tank that was guarding the force. In parallel, there was an explosion of two two-story buildings. The structures collapsed as a result of this explosion, at a time when most of the force were inside them and nearby. The buildings likely exploded as a result of mines that our forces had planted inside in order to destroy the buildings and the terrorist infrastructure in the area. We are still examining and investigating the details of the event and the reason for the explosion.
The heavy death toll has sent shockwaves across Israel. It has also infuriated Israeli government officials. Speaking about the incident, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said, and I quote, "This is a hard and painful morning. Our hearts are with our precious families during their hardest hour." He added, "This war will determine the fate of Israel in the next decades. Our fallen soldiers are an imperative to achieve war objectives." Meanwhile, the IDF has also released the names of the soldiers killed. It says most of them were serving as reservists at the official training school. The list includes the likes of 32-year-old Sergeant Major Matan Lazar, 23-year-old Sergeant First Class Cydric Garin, and 27-year-old Sergeant First Class Yuval Lopez, to name a few. So how do we perceive these developments? Do they indicate a new turn in this war? Well, we can't say for sure at this point, but one thing's certain, that Israeli forces are still facing fierce resistance in Gaza. This is despite claiming to be able to wind down operations in the area. Plus, Hamas's ability to continue to launch such attacks, that too 3 months after the IDF first entered the enclave, has raised questions about Israel's strategy for this war. In a nutshell, this attack proves that Israel's claims that it has finished Hamas are wrong. Back in Jerusalem, this bitter reality has saddened many Israelis. They're reacting with remorse, expressing their shock at what unfolded. Here are a few of the voices.
Well, that's horrible. That's horrendous. It's terrible. You know, it's our sons, it's our brothers. It's terrible. But we got to do what we got to do so that October 7th doesn't happen again.
The most terrible incident that occurred to Israel, and it's very sad, you know, to deal with that, to wake up in the morning and to read about all the soldiers that fell down, that they die, and you don't know how to handle it. You don't know how to handle the situation.
I am sick that we're losing these wonderful young men. We need them alive in Israel.
The bottom line is this. 109 days since this war started, no side seems to have the upper hand. Israel's claims of destroying Hamas have proven to be wrong. Is this why it is offering a 2-month pause in fighting? You see, an Axios report claims that Israel has given Hamas a proposal to pause fighting for 2 months as part of a multi-phase deal, a deal that would include the release of all remaining hostages in Gaza. There are more than 130 of them who are still being held by Hamas. Israel is willing to temporarily cease its operations if Hamas releases them. But the question is, will Hamas, which may be emboldened by the recent attacks, comply? We'll have to wait and watch. From one theatre of conflict, we turn to another, the Red Sea. The bloodbath there continues. In the latest instance, the Houthi rebels allegedly conducted another attack on an American vessel. Immediately after the attack, there were explosions in Yemen's capital as American and British forces conducted new strikes. Let's now take you through what happened. To start with, 24 hours back, the Iran-backed Houthi rebels claimed that they carried out another attack, this time against a U.S. military cargo ship. It was apparently attacked off the coast of Yemen. Here's what a Houthi military spokesperson said about the attack.
With the help of God Almighty, the naval forces of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation targeting an American military cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden using appropriate naval missiles.
Immediately after this claim was made, the U.S. rebuffed any reports of an attack. It called the Houthi statement untrue. But interestingly, it launched strikes in Yemen's capital. Was this in retaliation to the alleged Houthi attack? Look at the images on your screen. They show bright orange flashes in Sana'a skyline with the audio of planes flying overhead. What was this attack about? Well, the Pentagon says it targeted a Houthi underground site as well as missile and surveillance bases of the Iran-allied group. About an hour later, the footage emerged from the United Kingdom. It was released by the British Defence Ministry. It showed aircraft taking off from an airfield. The ministry added that it used precision-guided bombs to strike multiple targets near Sana'a. The UK statement made it clear that this was, in fact, a joint operation. A remark by UK's Foreign Minister further cleared all doubts. He issued a statement saying that the campaign to degrade Houthi capability will continue. He, however, did add that these attacks must not be seen as attacks on the people of Yemen.
What the Houthis are doing is unacceptable, it's illegal, and it's threatening the freedom of navigation. That's why we've taken the action. Alongside that action is a whole set of measures we'll be taking, including sanctions and other pressure to put on the Houthis, combined, of course, with the action the Royal Navy is taking with others in the Red Sea.
These attacks may not be aimed at the people of Yemen, but they're being seen as such. Speaking to the media in Sana'a, scores of Yemenis said that they won't be deterred by the strikes and their support for Palestine will remain steadfast. So the US is in no mood to relent. Neither are the Houthis, with an overwhelming support from the people of Yemen. What's the way out? How is this going to end? Well, Qatar, for one, has been trying to mediate. In a recent statement, a Qatar Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Qatar will not stop and will utilize every opportunity to find a solution.
In regard to the mediation efforts, they are currently still ongoing. Qatar has not stopped since the first day, as I say every week. We are taking every opportunity to exchange points of views and get to solutions while communicating with both sides of the conflict, in addition to the different regional and international parties. The Qatari efforts are ongoing. We are hearing and reading, as you are, a lot of media reports on these efforts. What we stress on is to take the information from the main sources, because in reality a lot of this information is wrong. Missing elements are not up to date with the latest developments on the ongoing efforts of mediation.
Now, here's the thing. The mediation efforts have been underway for quite some time now, but they haven't achieved much. The Houthis' unwarranted actions in the Red Sea continue. So do strikes by American and British forces. From where we see it, the issue is not dying anytime soon. It is official, the Maldives has become a Chinese outpost. How else can you explain what is happening? The Maldives has given a green light to a Chinese spy ship. In other words, Malé will soon be hosting a Chinese spy ship, this one. The name of this vessel is Xiang Yang Hong 03. As we speak, the vessel is sailing towards the Maldives. What will it do in the archipelago? Will it try to monitor Indian installments from the Maldives? Will it monitor Indian interests? Will China study the waters around India? You know, the seafloor, the currents, the salinity. What will it do by studying them? Develop the perfect combat capability, the perfect submarine to counter India. On paper, this ship is an innocent ocean research vessel. Its real mission has been kept confidential. Let me point you to data from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. It says, of the 13 Chinese vessels undertaking the bulk of survey and research in the Indian Ocean since the year 2020, all have links to the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. All of these research vessels have displayed suspicious activity. What kind exactly? They have sometimes docked at military posts. Sometimes these vessels have turned off their tracking devices. China maintains the world's largest fleet of civilian research vessels. At least 80% of them have displayed red flags, like going dark before entering another country's EEZ or exclusive economic zones. Which is why this ship, the Xiangyang Hong 03, heading to the Maldives, becomes an important story. The ship reaches Maldives next month. Its original destination was Sri Lanka. It was scheduled to dock at a Lankan port this year, but Colombo said no. So the Chinese knocked on the doors of the Maldives. The Maldivian president, Mohammad Muizzu, was happy to oblige. But at what cost? Muizzu is already facing heat at home, especially from his predecessor, Abdullah Yameen. Why? For not being Indian enough. How does being a Chinese outpost help the Maldives? Let me explain. The only party that stands to benefit is Beijing. You see, the Indian Ocean is extremely critical for Beijing. Crude coming into China travels through the Indian Ocean. China is scared that if a war breaks out, this particular waterway, critical for oiling the war machinery, could become a no-go zone for Chinese vessels. So China is building outposts. China already has ports in Djibouti and Pakistan. It also controls Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, and now China is turning the Maldives into a safe haven for its spy ships. The spy ship reaches Maldives next month. Male says the ship will not conduct any research while in Maldivian waters. So what will it do then? Spot dolphins, perhaps? The Maldives says that the ship has been given clearance for quote-unquote rotation and replenishment. Here's something else the Maldives said this evening. I'm quoting. The Maldives has always been a welcoming destination for vessels of friendly countries and continues to host both civilian and military vessels making port calls for peaceful purposes. Muizzu knows better than mistaking the Chinese spy ship for a vehicle of peace. But he also knows better than angering the Chinese masters. Guess who's visiting the island country? The CCP's Vice Minister of the International Liaison Department. Her name is Sun Hayam. She comes to the Maldives on the heels of Muizzu's return from China. What's on the agenda, you ask? To strengthen bilateral ties between the Maldives and China. In other words, strengthen China's hold on the country. Ensure that its outpost does not go out of hand. What determines which side wins in a battlefield? 1. Strategy. 2. Firepower. The side with the stronger military and more lethal ammo has an upper hand in a war. This is where I introduce you to our next story. The story of a dream bullet. One that China has created. This bullet, reports say, has the potential to reshape the global military landscape. What makes it so special? Let's find out. This is reportedly a smart bullet. It can be fired from an electromagnetic gun. Once propelled, the bullet travels at the speed of Mach 7. They say once you fire a bullet, you can't change its course. But in the case of the dream bullet, you can. You can adjust its path, change its direction, change its target. In fact, the bullet will do all of this by itself. It continuously receives signals from a satellite navigation system. And based on the data, the dream bullet adjusts its flight path. Sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? This dream bullet travels at the speed of 2,500 meters per second. This is China's new bullet. But this bullet is a rip-off. Like most other things that China makes, the dream bullet 2 is a copy. Time for some history. In 2012, the United States Navy spoke about the concept of a dream shell. It wanted a shell that could be launched by electromagnetic rail guns or coil guns. The US Navy wanted this shell to have the speed of Mach 5. What's more, it envisioned a shell that could be guided by GPS. But you know what they say, walls have ears. China has ears everywhere. Beijing did what it does best, stole the idea. It is 2024 and China has the dream bullet. The United States, meanwhile, still does not even have a prototype. The Chinese bullet was created by a team in China's Naval University of Engineering. The lead scientist is a man named Feng Junhong. He has no qualms in admitting that the head start came from the West, that the idea was stolen. But Feng says that they got down to working on the idea. They had absolutely no guidance at that time. Now that China has this dream bullet, how does it plan to use it and where? There are too many conflicts China is caught in, from South China Sea to the Himalayas. At which front will Beijing deploy its dream bullet? And can it deploy it at all? Now this dream bullet has become a reality. The dark side of this concept has come to life too. 1. This dream bullet does not have a dream precision. It can go off path by up to 49 feet. Imagine that. 2. During the launch of this dream bullet, an intense electromagnetic field is generated. This field can affect the functioning of delicate electronic components. I'm talking about the likes of chips and antennas. Chips are found in most war machines and antennas aboard more war vehicles. You know, I'm talking about the likes of tanks. Can China afford to derail these vehicles by using these dream bullets? Here's another problem. These smart shells need good satellite signals. So what happens when the signal is weak? Problem number 4. When the shell travels through air, it generates a lot of heat because of friction. This is far from ideal. Problem number 5. When the shell is traveling through air, instead of going straight, it whirls and sways erratically. This again is not ideal for a chaotic battle zone. It endangers the troops, even the side firing the dream bullet. So when you account for all of this, the Chinese bullet does not sound all that dreamy now, does it? And like all things Chinese, the bullet is riddled with flaws. Moral of the story, some weapons are best kept in science fiction and fantasy, and some armies best kept outside the battle zone. The Indian tectonic plate could be splitting into two. Let me repeat that so that sinks in. The Indian tectonic plate could be splitting into two. I will start with a question. How do you think the Himalayas were formed? The range was formed because of the collision of two tectonic plates, the Indian and the Eurasian plates. These two plates are still colliding, which is the reason why the Himalayas are growing. And this is also why the Indian continental plate is reportedly breaking into two. Scientists say the tear is already happening beneath Tibet. What are the signs? The story begins 60 million years ago. The Indian continental plate collided with the Eurasian plate. The Indian plate was driven below the latter. As a result, the Eurasian plate was lifted skywards. Now the part of the Indian plate that is submerged is pretty buoyant, which is why instead of being plunged into the Earth's mantle depths, the plate is sticking along the belly of the Eurasian plate. Scientists believe some parts of this plate could possibly have folded or wrinkled. Now, scientists in China studied earthquake waves under Tibet. They say they have found evidence of a tear in the Indian tectonic plate. These scientists say parts of the submerged Indian plate have started delaminating, meaning it is being divided. The more dense part of this plate is sinking into the mantle, while the lighter part continues to float beneath the surface of the Eurasian plate. The delamination is happening beneath Tibet. This is where the plate is splitting into two. This theory was presented at the American Geophysical Union conference in San Francisco in December. Scientists say they never thought a continental plate could behave this way. While computer models had suggested such a possibility when dealing with dense tectonic plates coming apart like this in reality is a first. Quick point to be noted, the study is yet to be peer-reviewed. Moving on, is Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau afraid of immigration? Is his country unequipped, rather ill-equipped to handle foreign students? What makes me ask all these questions? It's Canada's recent announcement. Listen to it yourself now.
I am announcing 3 principal measures. 1, a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permits. It is the latest in a series of measures to improve program integrity and set international students up for the success in order to maintain a sustainable level of temporary residence in Canada as well.
You see, Canada has put a temporary ban on taking international students for the next 2 years. Why is that? As Immigration Minister Mark Miller just said, to maintain a sustainable level of residence in Canada. What it essentially means is that Canada has bit off more than it could chew. It is facing a crippling housing crisis, and the flurry of foreign students last year did not help the cause. I have some statistics for you. Last year, Canada permitted some 900,000 students, the number more than tripled in a decade. The Canadian government thought that this would drive economic growth, but what it actually steered was a shortage of housing and part-time jobs. According to government data, there was a shortfall of 345,000 housing units. Rents shot up. Freshly landed students lugged their bags around from door to door just to find a place to stay, even a place on rent. And Canada doesn't want to repeat that mistake, so it has announced this cap. How many students will it be taking now? Listen to it.
For 2024, the cap is expected to result in approximately 364,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. In the spirit of fairness, we are also allocating the cap space by province based on population, such as that some provinces will see much more significant reductions.
You see, Canada will only be taking 360,000 foreign students this year, and the distribution is going to vary from province to province, depending on the population. And that's not all. The eligibility criteria for post-graduation work permits has also changed. Starting September, students of institutions that have a private-public model will no longer be able to apply for a work permit. And as for spouses, only those whose partners are in master's, doctoral and professional programs will be eligible. Anything other than that won't make the cut. So you see, Canada is trying its best to discourage foreign students from coming. The same students who contribute roughly over $22.3 billion to its economy every year. Even more than its exports of auto parts, lumber or aircraft. After the recent diplomatic spat between India and Canada, the interest of Indian students fell like a brick. In the second half of 2023, the number of applications for new study permits from India dropped to some 86,000. This figure was close to 146,000 in the same period a year before. You see, there was a decline of nearly 40%, and now Canada is saying it doesn't want more foreign students anyway. It is citing program integrity, eliminating academic oversight, and what not for it, excuses. But is that really the reason? Well, maybe a part of it. The bigger questions at the moment are, has Justin Trudeau failed Canada's education sector? Or is he simply afraid of immigration? Because if you give someone a student visa, you are giving them a path for permanent residency. Is America's eternal fear rubbing off on Trudeau as well? Or is Canada admitting defeat? That its infrastructure simply isn't strong enough to handle foreign students? On tonight's segment of Gravitas Snapshot, we're putting the spotlight on Dean Phillips, the ice cream man who can make life slippery for US President Joe Biden. He's a multi-millionaire gelato tycoon, the heir to one of America's largest liquor dynasties, and a Democrat presidential candidate who's already mounting a big challenge to Joe Biden in the race for the White House's top job in 2024. While most polls show incumbent Biden as an underdog in his anticipated contest against Republican ex-US President Donald Trump, Dean Phillips, it seems, is changing that equation with his own presidential bid. That's right. According to him, the 2024 US presidential elections could become a Phillips versus Biden contest rather than the expected Trump versus Biden rematch. In a recent interview, the congressman from Minnesota said, and I quote, "Joe Biden is one of the least well-positioned Democrats to take on this mission. Biden is still the overwhelming favorite for Democratic nomination, but Phillips' chances of winning are not zero at the moment." He was born in January 20, 1969 in St. Paul, Minnesota. His biological father was a captain in the U.S. Army. Family members say that Dean is the spitting image of his father. In 2000, Dean Phillips earned an MBA from the University of Minnesota. He was named the new CEO of Phillips Distilling Company. In 2012, Phillips stepped down as CEO of Phillips Distilling to manage a small Texas-based gelato company called Talenti. It quickly became one of the best-selling ice cream brands in the country. Phillips' political career began in 2018. In his first campaign, he presented himself as a fiscally responsible, socially inclusive moderate. He focused on bipartisanship and pragmatic governance. He said at the time, "I don't aspire to be a politician, I aspire to be a representative." Interestingly, he has voted with Biden's stated policy positions 100% of the time. After Hamas attacked Israel in early October last year, he called for a two-state solution. In early 2023, Phillips began agitating for a Democratic challenger to Biden. In February, he said of Biden, and I quote, "He's a president of great competence and success. I admire the heck out of President Biden, and if he were 15, 20 years younger, it would be a no-brainer to nominate him. But considering his age, it's absurd. We're not promoting competition, but in fact trying to extinguish it." According to reports, a campaign bus with Dean Phillips for president was spotted driving around Ohio on October 24th. This was several days before he had officially announced his presidential bid. The bus bumper had teased his new campaign slogan, "Make America Affordable Again." What do fellow Democrats say? Well, they are not very pleased. Democrats have gone to great lengths to ridicule Phillips and his campaign. Some have even accused him of disrespect and disloyalty. They say he is dividing the party. On January 20th, Phillips said he might even consider running on the ticket of No Labels, a centrist group exploring an independent bid if there appears to be a potential rematch between Trump and Biden. Naturally, Democrats are alarmed. They fear that his parallel candidacy might siphon votes from Joe Biden and hand them over with an edge to Donald Trump. It's a long-shot challenge to Biden at the moment, but Phillips has gone where few Democrats dare go. And that, in fact, is what makes 2024 race to the White House even more interesting. It's no secret that brands go to great lengths to sell their products. Ambush marketing, social media, product placements, billboards, endorsements, big campaigns. But what happens when they use children as bait to sell fast fashion? Under scrutiny today is one fashion giant. You probably own this brand's products. You jump on their sales, their offers, scour the internet for deals. I'm talking about H&M. It is under fire for sexualizing children. In its recent ad campaign, the ad in question showed a picture of two primary school girls. They had poker-faced expressions, much like the ones you see on models walking the ramp. They wore pinafore dresses, which look like your everyday school uniform. You would think there's nothing wrong with this, until you saw the caption. "Make those heads turn in H&M's back-to-school fashion." In what kind of sick, twisted, dystopian society are children being used to flaunt fashion, which can make heads turn? Which perverse heads are turning to look at them? These are uncomfortable questions being asked by social media, and rightfully so. Some of them are on your screens now. Let me read them out for you. "This is sickening. This is sexualizing kids," said one user. "It's pretty tone deaf to use such phrases with images of young schoolgirls in school uniforms," said another. "We are a culture lost to corporatism and pornification. This is sick," was another reaction. The consensus was clear, and thank God for that. The campaign was inappropriate, insensitive, unethical, period. The brand was forced to apologize. The ad has now been removed. But is that enough? A weak apology, taking down an offensive ad. We have to ask, what kind of society are we living in where sexualizing children for a campaign is a routine marketing exercise? Let me be honest, this has happened before. French luxury brand Balenciaga committed a similar sin in 2022 in its holiday campaign. It featured children carrying the brand's famous bear bags. The only problem was that the bears were adorned in inappropriate clothing, bondage harnesses, and other such costumes. Without going into details, I'll just say this: no child has any business being around such bags. So why did Balenciaga choose to make children the brand ambassadors? It gets worse. Allegedly, in one of the images, the documents on the table appeared to show court filings related to a child pornography case. What was the suggestion here? Spanish brand Zara too has come under the scanner recently for campaigns sexualizing children. What is going on? How are these big brands with inflated budgets, big checkbooks, multiple teams of advisors making these so-called gaffes? Or are they intentionally using children to sell these products, to spark a reaction? Just to sell jackets and handbags? Once again, these are uncomfortable questions, and I'm not sure we can digest the truth. These are big brands with big wallets, massive marketing budgets, multiple teams to guide and advise them on how to sell their products. How then are children being used as puppets in hyper-sexualized ads? These are all signs of a dystopian society, one where a childhood is simply not protected or guarded anymore. In fact, this childhood is vulnerable to exploitation. Brands are no longer targeting young adults, but children. I'm not exaggerating when I say that children have now become primary consumers of fast fashion and even beauty. And as parents, we need to sit up and listen. Have you seen the latest problematic trend on TikTok? It's called Sephora Kids. For the unversed, Sephora is a multinational retailer of personal care and beauty products. Now, 10-year-olds are walking into Sephora stores with a wish list. Believe it or not, instead of playing with toys and puzzles and books, they're playing with makeup, skincare, scented bath products. While all of us are scrapping our last bits of childhood, kids are trying to become adults. This is a wake-up call for parents. Stop gifting your children makeup and beauty products as Christmas gifts. I can't tell you to boycott brands because that's futile. But pay attention to what your child is exposed to. Social media is already putting undue pressure on this particular generation to look a certain way, feel a certain way, act a certain way. Their self-esteem is fragile. The last thing we need as of now is a campaign using children to turn heads. What is your favorite font? Let me stop you before you say Comic Sans. If you prefer italics, then you may be closer to what my next story is about. Ever since typing has replaced traditional handwriting, cursive has lost its charm. Some may even call it a lost art, but slowly and steadily it is being revived. At least American lawmakers are trying their best, and they believe it will bring along some brain benefits. Let me break it down. In California, the technique of cursive handwriting was stopped being taught in 2010. But now the Golden State, along with almost 24 others, has made cursive education mandatory. In some form at least, public school students from 1st through the 6th grade will now learn to write in cursive. And why is that? Well, it's a topic of debate in educational and scientific circles. Neuroscientists say that writing out letters in cursive can boost overall learning and language development. In fact, young children may even find cursive easier to learn and replicate. Since the letters are joined together, children might find it more autonomous. It can even enhance visual motor skills and lead to better learning outcomes. A small study by Italian researchers found that teaching cursive to students in the first year of primary school can improve their reading skills. Canada too tried to do away with cursive, but it resurrected it in 2023. Other than that, the handwriting is still widely taught in Western Europe. Spain, Italy, Portugal and France have held on to this tradition. And in the United Kingdom, joined-up handwriting is still taught in English classrooms. Meanwhile, Switzerland only teaches basic script. In 2016, Finland also removed cursive handwriting from its schools. You see, the trends vary from country to country, but some educators fear that letting go completely of cursive could spell a backslide in academic results. While there are no downsides of teaching it, so why risk anything? Multiple studies have shown that it is still beneficial to write with pen and paper, but the greatest benefits are tied to the act of writing itself, whether cursive or not. And with that, it's a wrap on tonight's Gravitas. Thanks for watching the show with me, Priyanka Sharma, leaving you as always with images.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA,